Well, folks, the start of the week. Thanks for joining us here in Canada, the US, and around the world. And we've got stories this morning from all around the world, including a couple of things that have emerged faster than we thought on the weekend edition. Of course, I like to look forward into what's coming up in the week ahead. I was talking about China and other things, so some of that's materializing already. Just some absolutely stunning stuff from around the world. We're going to start you in Australia this morning and today, whatever time you're tuning in, because in Australia, the government there has done something no other government, no other democratic government has tried yet, and they are putting in a ban, a legal ban on kids 16 or under 16, from actually having an account, on the internet. And that would mean whether they want to listen to TikTok or be part of YouTube or Instagram, it's going to be illegal for under 16-year-olds to do so. This is being based, the big thing to keep your minds on and our minds on here is the fact that Australia is recognizing what many countries are, and that is the overall effect, or at least one of the prevailing effects of being on screen time is not being seen as positive. You hear everything from brain rot to isolation, in some cases increasing rates of anxiety across the board and suicide rates. I don't want to sound alarmist, and we're not saying the entire internet is bad, because of course there are many fabulous things about it and fabulous things about AI, but governments are starting to see and hear, and parents are hearing, that there's some tremendously disturbing things going on. Now, people are saying, look, there's no way you can pass laws. Kids are going to learn how to get around these laws, where you have to be able to, the network itself has to be able to have age identifying factors there. And people are saying, well, no sense trying to make a law because some people are going to break the law. Well, I'm not sure you can use that argument as a criteria. It's like saying hardly anybody of 99.9% of the human race are going to murder people. And yet some people do murder. So we don't say, let's scrap the law on murder because a few people are able to get around it. You have laws to deal with even the tiny amount of things. So the fact that they are trying to do a law, or that somebody might get around it, shouldn't be the determining factor. There should be other things that come into play. Whatever the situation, I can tell you, the whole world is watching Australia right now and seeing, is this going to be able to hold? And is the concern about everything that's out there on these platforms, is that going to take over? Is a new black market going to start up? This is going to be fascinating, folks. And don't worry, the folks from down under, as they say, they usually find ways to, we say there's more than one ways to fix a cat. They say there's more than one way to cook shrimp on the Barbie. So let's see what happens and where this goes. Go from there, from Australia, which they're concerned about impacting the whole social scene and how we think about things. Jump over to Alberta, Canada, where the Law Society there is saying that lawyers now are going to be required to take a course on Indigenous issues, Indigenous culture, stories from the First Nations and Indigenous past in Canada. Okay, that's an interesting thing, but who gets to say what items or issues lawyers should be forced to take extra training on? This is going to develop into quite an argument and a discussion, because when you talk about those who put weight either on the Constitution or on other things, this is going to emerge into an interesting debate. For instance, through the decades, if not through the thousands of years, evidence-based issues, evidence-based items are required. If you're bringing forward, whether you're charging somebody, whether you're bringing forward something to the courts, evidence is central. And evidence and 2 or 3 witnesses and a written record and an archaeological record, these are all huge, have been for thousands of years. As a matter of fact, the entire so-called Judeo-Christian culture or Western worldview is based on evidence of historic writings, things that were written thousands of years ago, actually written and proven that they were written then, archaeological records to back it. And so that even evolves into the development of our legal system. When Canada was founded in 1867, you go back to the founding of the United States, even back before that, 1776, and other important dates, and even going back to the founding of European culture. When it comes to court-related issues, evidence-based was very clear. You had to have 2 or 3 witnesses if it's criminal-based, and these things carried the court tradition and what's allowed in court for a couple thousand years. Now there is an allowance and acceptance, and you can argue if this is right or wrong. I'm just stating the fact. There is an acceptance that simply oral tradition, that is the telling of stories, should be enough to decide a case. And so in Canada, you may have heard there's some raging debate going on, for instance, in a particular area, and it's near a city called Kamloops, whether there are over a couple of hundred bodies of children buried under the dirt. And there is one side that says, well, we think there is. We think that some of the ground penetrating sonar shows some anomalies. And others are saying, well, dig it up, then go down there, dig down and find out. There's a bit of a battle that's emerging. Some are saying, no, we should just rely on the oral tradition. And now lawyers are being required to take courses which will lift up, I guess you could say, or emphasize oral tradition over written and evidential tradition. It also goes to the issue, there's another battle that's raging. Most governments in the world, and let's call it the modern world or anything over the last 1,000 years or so, and especially the last couple hundred years in terms of the development of democracy, most governments have different branches. As you would know, it's called a balance of law, because we know human nature tells us if you give one person or one group all the power, eventually that becomes all-consuming. They will look to crush everybody else, and they will make good reasons why everybody should listen to them. That's our human nature. And so governments are constructed, generally speaking, with what we call 3 branches. First, there's the legislative branch, or the parliamentary branch. That's the folks that get elected. So they obviously have huge power, as they should in a democracy. But then there's a concern that could just result in mob rule. So whatever the prevailing anger or rising tidal wave of anger on something might be the only controlling factor. And so rather than just simply what we call direct democracy, doing what exactly the majority view wants at a particular time, the other balancing branch is the executive branch. That usually means your prime minister and cabinet minister, or the president and Congress in various countries, largely speaking. So you've got the people who are elected, then you've got that's the legislative branch, then you've got the executive branch. They're the ones who put the laws into place. And then just in case those two working together could get too powerful, as remember, human nature is we always people try to acquire more power, so then you put the courts in place. You have a constitution, and then you have judges, so that if something needs to be decided beyond the legislature or the executive branch, it goes to judges who don't get elected, which is proper. They shouldn't have to bow to the vote every 2 years or every 4 years. And so the theory was they would decide based on how the constitution of the country was initially written. Of course, that has taken on a new wave, or let's say a new dimension, where increasingly judges are interpreting and what they'll call in one country a growing constitution, or in Canada it's called the living tree approach. That was established way back in 1929. And so you've got these competing forces that are never perfect, but are balanced, or supposed to be balanced. Now you've got the fact that judges have to take these courses, new courses, additional courses. Lawyers now have to take the courses, and when they're presented with the course, let's say on Aboriginal history or First Nations, and they're hearing the arguments about whether you need to prove that some land belongs to you, whether you need to prove that certain things under the ground might actually be bodies, whether you just go with oral tradition, or you're going to stick with what has carried what we call Western civilization for a couple of thousand years, even longer, are you going to have to go with true, proven, hard facts more than just oral tradition? These things are looming up because the laws that will flow from the decisions of courts are going to determine more and more even what the legislative and executive branches have. In other words, the courts are becoming more powerful. You'll have to decide if you like that. The trend is there in all countries. Courts are becoming more powerful, in many cases overriding what the elected people put in place. The only way to have balance on that, if you don't like some of the court rulings in your country, if you don't like the direction you're going, then you have to look at who is appointing the judges. And it tends to be that liberal or socialist judges will be appointed by governments that are left-leaning, liberal or socialist. And so you'll get certain rulings that come from that. If people want to change in that, then they're going to have to be electing governments that would be small c conservative, and a conservative approach generally says if there's going to be changes in a society, it should be slower, it should be incremental, we should take time to do this. So more and more, it's as judges in the courts take more power away from democratically elected people, you're going to have to start thinking about who you're electing democratically, because those are the people who are going to then appoint the judges. Keep an eye on that development. I said on the weekend edition, and you know that I like to look ahead at the week and just give a little heads up on things. Something has happened even faster than we thought. I said to keep an eye for the week ahead on some developments relative to China and its increasing strain on the world, becoming increasingly militant. It's always been militant, but just keep an eye on some stories breaking out of there, because the tension is increasing, especially as the U.S. wants to move to continue to maintain its own democracy and not be overwhelmed by communist nations and communist thought. There's that whole dimension. And China, of course, is pushing back against that. In China right now, whenever a huge power like China begins to lose or struggle economically, they know they begin to get worried, because then their people are going to get worried, and they know what a revolution can do there. So you saw just today, you're going to see more of this, and yesterday this was developing. Some issues in the skies where Chinese jets and Chinese radar have locked into Japanese jets that are flying over some of the areas where there's disputes in the various ocean bodies about certain islands. And also Japan with their Prime Minister Sanae Taikachi, and I've said keep an eye on her. She's an amazing woman. Media don't like her because she is small c conservative in many of her views. So normally you would see global media, international media, and organizations like the CBC in Canada and CNN in the US, normally you'd see them very excited about a woman leader, but not if that woman is conservative. And so you don't see as much attention on her, and the attention she is going to get, I'll predict this, is going to be increasingly negative. You watch. However, she is standing up to China. She even made some remarks just recently that if China makes moves on Taiwan, which, as you recall, China believes they actually own Taiwan. Taiwan kind of broke away in 1949 from the emerging communist nation of China and has established themselves as more independent. They are a democracy, but China still feels they own Taiwan. And there's always, if I can use the word, the saber rattling that goes on, where China might even be willing to attack Taiwan. And Japan is saying you better be careful, because if you attack Taiwan and we in Japan see that as a threat to us, we're going to fight back. So this is this is really coming up to the attention of people again around the world. Folks, keep an eye on what's happening. That's a big issue when you lock into radar somebody else's military jets. That the next step from locking them in, you've seen it on all the Top Gun movies, there's a beep, 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 beep sound, and the next thing you know, there's a missile coming at you. That's why it's being seen as very aggressive. Things are getting tense. Keep an eye on that. Another woman that is, in the view of many, completely amazing in terms of her courage, in terms of how she stands up. I can tell you many people have not heard of Maria Machada, or it might be pronounced Machada. I don't know in terms of the actual pronunciation. She's the opposition leader in Venezuela, and in the last election there, the strong feeling was that the opposition party actually won the election. Of course, the president of Venezuela, extremely left-leaning and a friend of all the other leftists, and of course he's accused, this is President Maduro, accused of leading the narco-drug trade, which is in many cases a severe threat on certainly the youth of the U.S. in terms of drug deaths, and that's why you see the U.S. and Trump bombing these gunboats. We've talked about that. I'm not getting into that issue, but Maria now she's in hiding most of the time because Maduro wants to kill her. And you might be saying, why haven't we heard more about her? She's an amazing woman. One of the reasons you don't hear a lot about her in really glowing terms is because, guess what? She's not a severe leftist. She's not a socialist. She believes in conservative approaches to the marketplace. She believes in things like the privatization of certain services, that they can be delivered better and more efficiently, and people can be more prosperous if there's less government rather than more government. And of course, around the world, the BBC, the CBC, CNN, these are all run by cultural Marxists. They hate that, and they hate any woman who is seen as conservative. But now she is being awarded the Nobel Prize, the Peace Prize. She was awarded that some time ago. It's a matter of collecting it because she's in hiding, and Maduro and his boys would like to kill her. She is going to be, somehow she's going to make it to the ceremony. It's going to be a stunning event, so watch for that as she emerges publicly. Then she's going to have to disappear again because she's in hiding, because the leftists, the socialists, in South America and especially Venezuela want to kill her. I'd really like the mainstream media to wake up a little, to drop your silly political hatred for women who do not, aren't sort of part of what you see as the sisterhood, and keep an eye on Maria, and let's give her some fair attention. And if she ever did get elected, I think you would see things turn around in Venezuela, and more people would be able to have a higher standard of living. Keep an eye on that. Another woman to keep an eye on, and this is, we're quite excited in Canada, we always have been over the last few years, about Summer McIntosh, the most stunning, some are already saying the most stunning female swimmer maybe in the history of the sport. She just competed at the US Open, the swimming trials there, which are always seen as sort of an indicator of the Olympics coming up. And she just smashed the record, the all-time record in the 200 butterfly in the United States at the US Open. Completely stunning. She's still a teenager. Just to give you an idea how amazing she is in terms of her strength, her speed, and her ability. Anytime there's a record, like she now has the record for the 200, then you always say, well, who's in second place? Who's in third place? Who's in fourth place? Who are the top five? What are the top 5 times posted in that particular event over the years? And guess what? It's Summer McIntosh. She holds all of those top times. Nobody's even close. And I've been saying for a while, and you can say, oh, you're too suspicious about this. Yes, she gets some attention from CBC. CBC, obviously, and the left media in Canada, of course they report when she wins, but she just doesn't seem to get the same lavish, loving, overwhelming, uplifting support that people, especially women on the left, get. I hope I'm wrong on that. I hope the CBC starts to talk about her more. She just seems to be a great young woman. So anyway, keep an eye on Summer McIntosh. I think she's going to knock it out of the park at the Olympics. And let's hope media in Canada just hold her up to be the amazing woman that she is. Well, one thing we've been watching for weeks in the United States is the demand, and with some justification, for the Epstein files. Epstein, of course, just being seen quite rightly as just an evil and malevolent individual, and everything he was involved in terms of underage uh, girls and Epstein Island and all of that. And of course, there's been just a rage on and for a full release of all of the files related to Epstein. And it's always been directed towards Trump. Well, as you know, just a little over a week ago, all the files are released and all the names are out there, and there is nothing, no new revelations about Trump, to the great disappointment of mainstream media around the world. But guess what? Why has it gone silent? Why is the files are all out now there? It's all been released, and so you'd think, wow, this is just going to be in the media every day, and it's going to be terrible revelations, especially about all these top leaders. Guess what? Over 80% of the names in the files are actually Democrats. And that's why it's gone silent, to the horror of those on the left and on the Democratic side. And Republicans wanted these files released. Also, over 80% of the name of those involved with Epstein are Democrats. So maybe that's some of the reason the whole Epstein file issue's gone kind of quiet. Well, in the world of entertainment, something else just happened for the first time ever in history. There's something called, for those of you who aren't in the U.S., there's something called the Kennedy Center Awards, and these awards are seen as very highbrow. These are the sort of the top elitist entertainers from around the world, and mainly in the U.S. They'd get recognized at the Kennedy Center. So they're seen to be sort of intellectually a step above the Oscars, because these are always, the high-level sophisticated individuals who win. And this year, for the first time ever, it was hosted by the President of the United States. So it's named after a Kennedy, but it's the President of the United States, being Donald Trump, who actually emceed the awards. And there were names like Sylvester Stallone, Sty Stallone was up there. Kiss, the group Kiss, whatever you think about them, George Strait, the singer, names that aren't usually in what's called the highbrow crowd, and very interesting. Now, Trump, of course, is a genius at recognizing there's more, there are millions and millions and millions of people who aren't necessarily all that caught up by what would be seen as the highbrow crowd of entertainers, some of the writers, some of the people in the arts who aren't that well heard of, but they have views which usually are consistently left of center, and they're not the ones that are being lifted up. And so there's all the rage among the culture and entertainment community. And remember now, most of that is culturally Marxist, and they've been saying this is terrible politicization. The huge irony, of course, these awards have always been intensely political, because whenever the people would get to the microphone and the camera to say, thank you to the world for recognizing how wonderful they are, they would always make intensely political statements, and nobody there to contradict them, because they're all coming from the culturally Marxist side. That's where the real anger is that it's being taken away largely from the left. It's always been political, and now Trump is just stating the obvious. So very interesting to see those awards, and also the anger that Trump has become involved in them. Well, you talk about cultural influence. The love of many, Taylor Swift, with two upcoming announcements. The first, there's going to be two releases that she's involved in. A film, it's called a concert film. So there's going to be a film about her Eras tour, and there's going to be a 6-part documentary that she is releasing on the Eras tour. I predict these will be absolute blockbusters. People are going to watch these in the millions and millions around the world. She is a force of culture. There is no question about it. So watch for these to emerge and to take shape. And she's already, of course, a multi-billionaire, not just a billionaire. This is going to increase her wealth. What is very interesting is, with the left, whether it's Democrats in the U.S. or whether it's liberals and the NDP and socialists in Canada, or the Labour Party and the Labour media in Great Britain, there's always been an attack on billionaires. And, I like to say with a bit of a smile, I think I'm the probably the only voice for those poor, unheard billionaires, and they're always being attacked. Bernie Sanders and others in the U.S. just basically want them annihilated, get rid of all billionaires. But it depends what the billionaire's doing, apparently, because you have a multi-billionaire now like Taylor Swift, never gets criticized for being a billionaire, never. And yet somebody like Elon Musk, now I'm just stating the case, don't get mad at me. So what has Taylor Swift done? Well, she some amazing concerts and singing, and she's everybody loves looking at the outfits she's wearing, which are usually not that, let's say, concealing outfits as she's prancing around. Everybody loves that. And no criticism of her as a billionaire. But what has Elon Musk contributed? Well, he's developed the electric vehicle more than anybody in the world. He's had breakthroughs in science that have helped humanity. He's going into space, and yet he's hated as a billionaire. So I guess it's not the billionaires, it's what the billionaires believe in that really counts. But keep an eye, those are going to be huge productions from Taylor Swift. So Netflix, up until a couple of months ago, or even a month ago, was having some difficulty. They were being seen as using their huge power and influence to actually control the culture, and coming out with very activist kind of productions, along with others. And but they have rebounded in a huge way. They are now in the throes of a major purchase of Warner Brothers. That's about an $82 billion acquisition. There are some saying this is going to hurt competition. They shouldn't be allowed to acquire them. I don't know about that. I think the internet and the cyber world has shown us that anybody can quickly emerge to the top. It's not like the old days where one or two studios could control everything, but there's going to be a huge impact on the culture now if this acquisition goes ahead, and it looks like it may. And so then people are saying, well, what about smaller organizations? What about smaller independent films? And Angel Studios comes into the discussion period quite quickly. Angel Studios, of course, which shows a clear preference for the development of what's known as faith-based productions, faith-based stories. And people can like that or not, it just happens to be a factor. They are huge productions, and their funding model is really, in a way, what you could call the original crowdfunding, because they are a public company. In other words, you can buy shares in Angel Studios. It's on the stock market, listed under ANGX. So you're going to have the giant corporate model now, like Netflix combined with Warner Brothers, competing against what we would call the crowd-funded model, being, if you like, I really like Angel Studios. Anybody can invest in them. Anybody can hold stock in Angel, and we are going to see what develops. Is it going to be the giant conglomerate? And usually the conglomerate is seen as an organization that is right-leaning, but of course Netflix is not. Or are the Angel Studios faith-based type of productions going to rise to the fore? It's going to be interesting to watch. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.